The Grauballe Man is a poem by Seamus Heaney, and it's actually titled after a bog body which was found in northern Denmark in the 20th century and has been displayed in a museum. And in this poem, while Heaney describes the bog body, but also this is my thesis, he uses it as a chance to solidify his position as one of the great Irish writers because he alludes to the Irish identity, and in this case, he also sends the message that the Irish people as a whole need to look back into their past for guidance as to how they should act in the current day when the poem was written in the 1970s in response to the Catholic and Protestant and the troubles that were happening in Ireland. So my first argument will be that I will split my thesis into 2 points. My first argument will be that in basically the use of figurative language is Heaney's message to the people to that they should look back into the past and that they have a corrupted vision of the past. And the first thing that we see is in the second and third stanza, we have these adjectives in each simile and metaphor in each line. We have adjectives that are related to this black color and to this darkness. Like the Black River of himself as the first line of the second stanza, it really serves the structure in this enjambment to allow us to see that the Black River is actually the idea of going deeper into the past. Because if as you see with Heaney, whenever he identifies something that's not shallow, that is actually like digging into the ground, an image like that, he usually extends it to this idea of looking back into the past. So with the basalt egg and also the Black River and the grain as bog oak, this seems at first to be just an idea, the idea that the bog body is black and it's wrinkled. But in reality, it's also sending the message that in order for Heaney, and the Irish people to see past, they must see past this blackness and that there's more to it. And this is the idea when in the next line, when he masterfully uses the rhyme as the idea with the swan's foot and the wet swamp root. Both of these, when you see these two images, it's hard to identify the similarities between them at first. But then when you look closer and you look at the structure of the poem, in which the syntax really connects the two together, you understand that he's trying to draw this image. What's the same between them? So we understand that the swan's foot, when we look at a swan, we never think of the foot. When we look at the root, we never think of it. It's a swamp root. And this is basically Heaney's message to the people, that they are only seeing the superficial side of the body and not really looking down deeper. And as we also know, the swan's foot is really still connected to the surface, and it's not really digging deeper, digging back into the past. And the tone of the poem seems to have this major shift in the fifth stanza, because while before we have this pastoral imagery, this warped pastoral imagery, you see that he's not painting a beautiful picture here, but it gets even darker. There's a progression throughout the poem that gets darker and darker, and now we understand when he provides in the fifth stanza the idea of the head lifting as a visor, you understand that the neck, the throat, which is how the Grauballe Man was killed, the throat that's been slashed is actually the face inside. So the face we see as the helmet is just the outside, and we're not looking deeper enough. And that is my first argument. Now let's transition to the second argument, which is naturally. So we're not looking at it properly. We're not seeing the true vision. So what do we do next? What then? How do we look deeper? And using basically in this next portion of the poem, Heaney really takes the forceful imagery. He uses forceful language, and he likens and he asks the rhetorical question: who will say corpse to this vivid cast? Who will say body to this opaque repose? Because we don't. He's saying that the way we describe this Grauballe Man, both ways are wrong. There has to be either a middle ground or something outside of it, because this thing is so similar to us. This man who was killed as a result of the violence and the hatred that happened, they consider sacrifice to be a good thing. They consider his death to be a good thing. But as you see in the first stanza, we are established at the last line of the first stanza that he seems to weep, that he is in pain. And now we solidify that here when we have his body being pulled out of the ground, head and shoulder out of the peat, bruised like a forceps baby. So we connect this sad man also with the idea of the baby, and how there's this naivety to the baby, yet at the same time there's also, in the youth, we have a capacity for beauty. So what do we have here? Is it beauty, or is it the opposite, ugliness? What are the Irish people right now in their troubles doing? And this dreadful tone only gets worse as we reach the final stanzas of the poem, and we see the final allusion to the dying Gaul. And right before we reach the allusion, we see this comparison of beauty and atrocity. And when I said at the beginning beauty and ugliness, it may be confusing why Heaney put this colon at the end of the sentence to emphasize beauty and atrocity, the comparison between the two. Because when you think of the two, they are not opposites. But in this case, they are. Because what we see as beauty is represented in the illusion of the shield. And how the shield, the dying Gaul, is a sculpture of a man who's dying, basically, and lying on the shield before his death. His weight is on the shield. So the beauty is represented in the shield. But the atrocity, the death, the dying Gaul, he's on the shield. He's on the beauty. So the beauty is trying to hold up all of the evil deeds that they have done. And